Hey guys, it's Ivan. Now it's a winter season and the temperature is getting colder, so it's a perfect time to talk about tuning of your analog oscillators and calibration of your voltage sources. If you own vintage analog equipment or eurorack gear, you're probably already aware that sometimes it needs to be calibrated, and we recommend doing so every time you switch your power supply or whenever you feel like your synthesizers are not really tracking so well. It might seem a little bit scary or complicated the first time you do it, but as you will see, it's very simple and it will save you time on service of your synthesizers, and you will be able to do it straight from your house. For today's video, I will be using the FURTHRRRR generator and Godspeed. Both of them have been made completely out of tune, which means they don't really track 1 volt per octave at all. And for the voltage sources, we're going to be using the Shuttle Control, which has a built-in Calibrator utility. And as an alternative, I will show you how to do the same procedure with the ground control or any other sequencer. So let's start with the FURTHRRRR generator and see how bad the tracking is. First, we have to plug in a saw wave just so we hear our signal. As you can see, the pitch is working. So now the second step is we have to choose our reference note. It can be anything, but it has to be always consistent. Since the FURTHRRRR generator has two LEDs that will show you that oscillator is tuned to note A, we'll be using note A as our fundamental reference. So let's tune it down to A. As you can see now, it's perfectly tuned. Next, we'll be using the Shuttle Control as our precise voltage source, and along with the Cargo 4 editor that has the Calibrator tool, this will allow us to jump over the range of 5 octaves instead of having to press the same key over different octaves on the sequencer, for example. Shuttle Control Calibrator tool allows us to cycle through the octaves automatically, and that way we can just focus on the oscillator with both hands by using one to tune and another one to hold it. For example, now we can see that it's set to the lowest octave, and if I press play on the Calibrator tool, it'll just jump through all of them automatically. So let's stop it there, and that's where we have to plug it into the pitch of our oscillator. Since we just plugged the lowest note from the Shuttle Control, which is a negative voltage, the tune of the FURTHRRRR generator got offsetted down, so we have to get back to the A note that is shown by both tuning LEDs. Now we're perfectly tuned to A note for the lowest note on the Shuttle Control. Now let's start the calibrator procedure, and we will see how far out of tune the oscillator gets as the octaves get higher on the Shuttle Control. So as you saw, pretty much every octave as we went up went a bit sharper, so the oscillator is definitely not tracking 1 volt per octave. And we'll show you how to fix it right now. So let's take out FURTHRRRR generator from the case, and you will see that since we have two oscillators in this module, we have two blue trimmers, which are used to either shrink the scale of 1 volt per octave or expand it, and these trimmers can be found on pretty much any synthesizer or vintage gear that is available right now. First, let me show you the logic of how you can tune the oscillator without having to think about shrinking or expanding your 1 volt per octave scale. So now let's start the calibrator procedure with the Shuttle Control and watch the LEDs. As you can see that with each octave, the tuning of this oscillator is getting sharper, which means it is to the right of your reference note. And if it is to the right, it means you have to adjust the trimmer to the right side or clockwise. And likewise for the other way, if your tuning is too flat, you have to turn the trimmer counterclockwise. So now we know that every time the octave is rising for the 1 volt per octave, each note is getting sharper. We'll just use and adjust this trimmer clockwise. First time maybe it's good to do like 4 turns, just to see how far off we are. So let's play the calibrator procedure, but first we have to return back to our reference note. As you can see, we're still very much sharp, so we can give it a few more turns clockwise. return back to the reference note, play the calibrator again. It's pretty much the last octave is blinking a little bit, so we can adjust a bit more. Start the tuning again. Now we're a little bit flat, so we return back one turn, and again adjust it. First we have to jump to the lowest note and then make sure that the reference note is set correctly. Again, we are a little bit flat. So one more turn. Since we are flat, we are turning counterclockwise. So as you can see now, for every octave in the range of 5 octaves, both LEDs lit up, which means our tracking is pretty much perfect. But if you want to have a really precise tracking, we recommend using external tuners that can show you all the sense offsets, or you can, for example, use your Ableton built-in tuner or any other software that you can find. So now let's switch to the second oscillator, and this time I'll leave the shuttle control procedure running continuously, and we'll be tuning it as it jumps in octaves. So first, let's replug the oscillator. Let's also plug our voltage source into 1 volt of this oscillator. Find a stable A note from which we can use as our reference. There is perfect. Also, another good point is you have to leave your cross modulation on anything that affects pitch all the way 0, because otherwise it will be very hard to tune your oscillator. So now let's start the calibrator and you will see if it's flat or sharp. As we can see, it's a little bit flat. So if it's flat, it means it's to the left of the reference, so we turn counterclockwise. So now we have 2 octaves which are a little bit sharp, so we have a few more turns counterclockwise. As you can see, now it's all perfect, and we just tuned an oscillator in under 1 minute. If your oscillators don't have any tuners, we recommend an AUTOPILOT, which is a dual tuner module that has 2 LEDs per channel that can show you if your note is either flat or sharp, and you also have a button by using which you can tune your oscillator to the nearest A note or C note. By running the same calibration procedure as on the FURTHRRRR generator, now we're going to switch to Godspeed that also has a built-in tuner, but it also features a tune button like on the AUTOPILOT. So by pressing this button, I can automatically tune this module to be on the nearest A or C note. So now that we have a perfectly tuned A note on the Godspeed, let's once again run the calibration procedure using the shuttle control, and we'll see if our tuning gradually gets more flat or sharp. So let's start. So as you can see, the last few octaves the LED was blue, which means that the tuning was offset to the left side or it was a little bit flat. So by using the same technique as on the FURTHRRRR generator, let's take out the module. On the Godspeed we have a trimmer on the right side, and since the tuning was a little bit flat, we'll turn it counterclockwise. So let's first give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns just to see how far we are. Since now we are on the lowest note, let's press the tune button. Tune it perfectly to the A note, so that is our reference. Start the sequence. So now only the last two octaves are a little bit flat. So I would say let's give it 4 more turns. To the left side or counterclockwise. Tune it again. Only 1 octave is now left. So 2 more turns counterclockwise. Make sure it's tuned. So as you can see now, for every octave the LED was purple, which means that the oscillator is tracking perfectly, and that's it for Godspeed. If you don't own a Shuttle Control and you don't have any tuning utilities, you can also use your sequencer as your precise voltage source. So for example, let's choose track 1 here, plug it in. What you have to do now is select a note that you will iterate over multiple octaves. So for example, I choose note A and make sure my oscillator is perfectly tuned to that note. Now what you can do is press A here, next note, next one. So you can just use any sequencer that can jump over multiple octaves as your calibration procedure. And now, to end this video, I will show you how to calibrate the outputs of the Shuttle Control and the ground control to track perfectly over 1 volt per octave scale. So to do this, we'll have to use a multimeter. That's something that can use or read voltages in a very precise manner up to a few decimal places. We'll switch it to the volt mode, leave it over here. And now I'll be using a different feature of the Cargo 4 editor that allows you to set the output voltage of the output 1 to be -3 volt, 0 volt and +3 volt. Now let's set the voltage output for every output on the Shuttle Control to be -3 volts. Insert a cable into any output, and we'll be using this to read the voltage value from the cable. So we attach one of them to the sleeve and another one to the ring. And as you can see, now we are reading -3026 volts. So we have an offset of 0.26 volts. And now we can use the Cargo 4 editor to set the value for -3 volts. So it's -3026. Next, we'll set all the outputs to be 0 volts and again read the value. As you can see, we have -0.0461. So again, we'll register that in the calibrator. And finally, we'll set all the outputs to output 3 volts, and again, measure this value. And we have 2.938. So now let's check the -3 volt output coming out from the Shuttle Control output 1 after the calibration. And we have -3.002, which is pretty much there. If you want to make sure it's even better, you just have to tweak it a little bit more. And now let's check the +3 value after the calibration. And we have 2.998, which again is very precise. And yes, if you want to make sure it's super precise, you just have to spend a little bit more time inside of the calibrator and everything will be perfect. The calibration procedure for the outputs on the ground control is identical as on the Shuttle Control, but here the first output is going to be the modulation output, the second output is going to be track 1 pitch CV, third output is track 2 pitch CV, and fourth output is going to be track 3 pitch CV. And you can run the same procedure as we just did on the Shuttle Control, and all your tracking and 1 volt per octave scaling is going to be perfect. This is it for this video. I hope everyone is already in the Christmas mood, and for 2022 we wish everyone to have stable oscillators. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, and until next time.